Go. Hey everyone, D here, and welcome to our big Season 1 review and discussion of The Mandalorian. So I am joined with this awesome 3-stream review here with Rob from Smirking Gun Reviews. Say hello, Rob.
Hello, Rob.
And of course, Marc from over on Enchantment of Eternity. How you doing today, Marc?
I'm doing really good. I think this is the first time I've ever been on your channel there.
Oh!
Yes. Good to be here. Thanks for having me, Rob. Good to meet you.
Excellent, excellent. So, okay, so I think we're just going to go ahead and dive right in here. I figured instead of going like an episode by episode review and doing that, I mean, all of our reviews are up on all of our channels. If anybody really want to dive in particulars, I think we've all pretty much expressed our feelings of this awesome show on that. But let's just go ahead and dive into what our general reviews are of the episode, and then I just want to hit some high points, some low points, and just sort of get a summation of why this show has really grabbed onto the audience members when maybe some other stuff hasn't quite so much. So let's start off with you, Rob. What are your general feelings on this season, first season of The Mandalorian?
It kind of hit like a lot of first seasons of shows does. Comes out really strong, struggles a little bit in the middle, and then brings it on home at the end to stick the landing. There's a little bit of problems with like episodes 4 and 5, and a little bit 6, but I've come around to 6. But it's OG Star Wars to me. One of the best things is it doesn't have any characters really that we're so attached to that it brings the controversy with it. And I feel like it just kind of leaves a lot to, like, I feel happy talking about Star Wars again. I don't feel afraid talking about Star Wars again. I don't feel like I'm worried about I'm going to make somebody mad about talking about Star Wars.
Excellent. Yeah, I think you bring up a good point there. Without not having any kind of baggage associated with these characters, there's a little bit more freedom to interpret and sort of play with them. That's really cool. What about you, Marc? What do you think about this first season?
Yeah, it was okay. It was all right. Like I enjoyed it, but after the first 3 episodes, I was like, wow, this show's amazing. I love it. This is Star Wars we wanted. We should have had from the beginning. Like, I agree. Like, they're doing the solo stuff in Rogue One and all this other stuff. That's just so milking off of fan service, although there was some fan service in here. But they focus more on original characters and explore aspects of this universe, which isn't as explored as much, at least not on screen. I mean, you have a lot of supplement books, comic books, and whatnot, but movie-wise, TV shows-wise, you don't have much. So I love that jumps into it, and it just explores totally different characters. But as the season went on, I don't know, like, I'm just not a fan of the episodic storytelling. Like, I know in your reviews you talked about how it came off as kind of a live-action cartoon, and at first I was like, oh, maybe not, but then after the whole season's over, I'm like, you're totally correct. It is like a live-action cartoon, and I'm not, I like cartoons. They're okay, but they're not my jam. Like, I prefer like high-quality serialized storytelling. And another show I heard this reference to, or referred to, is like, oh, this is similar to, is Xena Warrior Princess, and I've actually heard people reference that as a good thing, but I don't like Xena Warrior Princess, so I would reference this as a bad thing. So I love the beginning, I love the ending. That middle was not, like, I thought they could have done better if they just focused on the main story the whole time, made it more serialized, and not have, oh, let's go off in this adventure, which most of the adventures, particularly episode 5 that Rob mentioned, is just very cliche. It's just something we've seen. Like, I think someone mentioned Xena Warrior Princess did that practically every episode. So I think they could have been a bit more original with it.
Okay, yeah, I think that those are excellent points. I think, yeah, the one thing that we have gotten used to very much, I think, is the episodic storytelling for most shows. We're used to having a story slowly evolving, much less than, you know, back in the old days, Xena Warrior Princess, Legend of Hercules and stuff like that, where it was almost each episode stood off by itself. And I think that's something that the show kind of played with a little bit here. But I do have to agree that those episodes kind of in the middle are almost by definition filler, because we have our opening bit of storyline, we have our ending few episodes of storyline, and the stuff in the middle is just, you can sort of take it or leave it. And some of that worked for me, and some of it didn't, which is, I think, something probably to get in right here. So, okay, well, let's... Rob, I think you hit on an important point there on fan service and stuff, as well as in some ways getting just those little touches of fan service by exploring the large universes where the show worked a little bit. I think there has been a large critique that all of the movies and stuff, the episodics, were focusing on basically the Skywalker family, the Palpatine family, you know, this one group of characters, and there's a whole universe that we can explore with. And I think the show took advantage when it could of showing us the rest of this world, and I think those parts really worked. So what didn't work in those ideas? I mean, one of the ideas is what is it the show that really, well, I don't know, maybe we should go more into what did work. What was it, just the expansion of the universe, or was there anything else that you thought really made this show kind of connect with audiences, with people, with the fans? Rob?
Well, you know, they didn't make a mistake in going with a Mandalorian character, just because even as kind of ineffectual Boba Fett ended up being in the original trilogy, people love that look. And so picking him as a character was a great starting off point. Plus making him an anti-hero, a bounty hunter, somebody that you would have to be kind of won over. Like, you knew he was going to be like the rogue. That's another thing people really like, is the roguish characters, the ones who are the wild cards. People like to root for that. And then bringing in like the wolf and cub thing, it's been talked about a lot. Like, besides the live action cartoon part, people like that kind of story. This could have blown up in their faces. They did choose a great mascot for the cub. Basically, I mean, that the Baby Yoda has a life of its own now. But what I really like is they almost make a point of not really bringing up anything from anything else, just subtle hints of the timeline of what works where, and they trust us to know enough about the universe that they don't have to completely hold our hands. They had some good guest stars on here that, like, every time I saw somebody show up, I was like really pleased for the most part, except for maybe a couple of them. Like Carl Weathers. Who doesn't want to see Carl Weathers in something? You know, seriously. Ming-Na Wen. Oh my gosh, I was so happy when she was announced. I have always liked Gina Carano. I just desperately wanted her to be Wonder Woman at one point. So she's a great physical actress. Those all really work. Giancarlo Esposito. You're going to bring Gus Fring on the show. Good night. It's like a home run right there. The show gets immediate like credentials right there. I have so many people that have talked about how as soon as they knew he was going to be in there, they were tuning in just to see him. Also, when you got people like Taika Waititi directing, when you got Favreau writing, when you got Dave Filoni, who's from the Star Wars Clone Wars, you know, so when you talk about being a live action cartoon, you've got the guy who made Star Wars cartoons popular. He did popular, and those were episodic. So people were, once they understood that Dave Filoni was behind this, I think the episodic nature of a lot of the episodes was kind of forgiving, even if some of them, and in fact, the worst one probably was directed by Filoni. I don't know. I have a hard time bringing up the negatives, but the positives are that it, like I said, it's just, it makes me feel good looking forward to this every week. And knowing that, even if people didn't like every episode, most of it was positive. And it's so nice to just talk positively.
Yeah, for sure. With all the negativity and fandom out there. What about you? Mark? What do you think of the show? What do you think worked really well with the show? What are the good choices they made?
Well, I think this show had the right amount of fan service, because you do want to have some fan service in a franchise like that. You do want to, but you don't want to overdo it. You want it to be more subtle and sort of satisfying, the way some other Star Wars properties that came out this year kind of extremely overdid it. But I'm not going to talk about that. Where Mandalorian was sort of just right, and also like Desiree in the chat mentions that I love how emotive a helmet can be, and that's also really impressive. Like, it's really impressive that they have a main character who you never see his face, you never see the facial expressions. I mean, that's a risk. And I think, like, what Rob's point earlier, mentioned Boba Fett and how popular of a character he was, and there's been talk for years about doing a Boba Fett spin-off movie or whatever, and this was like a much better idea. This is like a billion times better. And I think now no one's going to be talking about Boba Fett anymore, because he appeared in like a couple minutes in the original trilogy and kind of hammed it up in the prequel trilogy. But now we have a much better character, Mandalorian, who's sort of more drawn out, more fleshed out. And I will say, like, at first, like when I first saw the first couple episodes when the Mandalorian saved Baby Yoda, I was like, well, this doesn't make any sense. They're just doing it for plot purposes. Why would he risk his life, his career to save this child? But towards the end of the season, they brought it to get back together. They made it make complete sense. They fleshed out the characters, the lore of the Mandalorian lifestyle, and how they take on apprentices, and they essentially became the child's father. Like, and so that everything fit together very well. And I think, as I said, for the most part, it was an interesting cast of characters that we got. And of course, Baby Yoda is a huge positive. I mean, everyone's going on about Baby Yoda, and I think that's a good reason. Even the most hardened, manly man can't deny that Baby Yoda is so cute. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, I think those are excellent points, and especially just the point with Boba Fett. Boba Fett was always a character that always had grabbed people, and I think it was more of the mysterious Mandalorian side to him, more of so much of who specifically Boba Fett was. Because when we got into the prequels and you started getting the Boba Fett backstory, I think it was like, do we really need to see more of that? And instead, it was really more of that Mandalorian mystery with the mask and everything. Which you're right, I think is a lot more engaging with audiences, and was a great reason to go, let's just do somebody entirely different and build up this whole new mystique that we don't have to, tie into previous films or previous adventures, especially since Disney's exploring their IP. They want as much breathing room as possible. But I think one of the other things they did really well is puppet Baby Yoda. We're not doing CGI. I think they did a great job of practical makeup effects on top of CGI. Some of my first couple of reviews, some of the CGI on the spaceships and stuff look matte painted, and people were like, no, they're trying to get it to match, the episode 4 and the early original shows and the look of that, which, okay, I can go with that. But to me, it was distraction, because when they did their creature effects, that was seamless. It was beautiful. You couldn't see where the makeup and the CGI mixed. I mean, you could tell that some of the stuff, the rancher, Nick Nolte's character, obviously very CGI face with all of the expressions and such, but there had to have been a strong, I think, physical makeup underneath that they build on top of. The small bits of fan service in Salacious Crumb roasting on a spit. And what was that, episode 1 or episode 2? It was just such a small, perfect thing. The mouse droid, a small, perfect thing where you just see that and you go, I recognize that. But it doesn't overly focus. And I think when they did make mistakes, it was when they leaned too much into that fan service. Which I think is probably the next few point to get into. So, all right, So great things. They're expanding their universe. They're picking a smart character, a new character. They're making some good choices in CGI and makeup. All right. What kind of little slip-ups did they did? What didn't work for you so much? What detracted from this adventure? And you can get into a little specifics if you want. Let's start off with you, Mark. What wasn't working really well with you?
Well, as I said, that sort of middle part, they sort of literally started losing the plot, and it just seemed like, oh, he's going to the adventure here. And plus, I think maybe for my taste, and just might be my personal taste, because I'm not a huge fan of spaghetti westerns, but I know they were going for a spaghetti western motif, and I think that for most of the part it worked, but sometimes I think they leaned way too heavily into that. Particularly the music, I thought that was a bit on the nose, sort of hit you over the head. Here's a western, and I think they could have been a bit more subtle with that. And also the just some of the characterizations I did think come off as cartoonish. Like, that's what I thought it was, maybe a live action cartoon, particularly with Carl Weathers' character towards the end of the season, where he's just all of a sudden, Baby Yoda saves his life, and he's like, "Oh, I'm your friend now," and it just seemed a bit maybe not as dynamic as I would have preferred it to be. And also, like, it's a classic, adventure. Or let's get some people together. And we gain a lot of friends, like they gained, Carl. Blanking on her name, Rob just mentioned it, but the other shock trooper character who came in.
Cara Dune, yeah.
Yeah, Cara Dune, yeah. So, yeah, and I liked her character. I thought it was good, and but I just think you got that, let's collect a bunch of friends coming together. And, yeah, I think maybe, and also, like, I don't know, it seems like Baby Yoda's powers worked when the plot required it to work, and it wasn't so powerful when the plot didn't require it to work. And I think one of the biggest drawbacks, and I want to get into something very specific now, is episode 6, which I didn't think was a bad episode. Well, it definitely wasn't the worst. But the problem with that, and it's kind of indicative of the entire season, is that they relied on all this backstory that we, the audience, knew nothing about. They're like, oh, we're coming to rescue this old guy, that Mandalorian used to work with, and he's the brother of this other woman who we don't know, we just met. So I felt zero connection to that, and I thought they were throwing too many characters and acting like we should care, which I don't think they did enough to make us care. Whereas other parts of the show, like, it did make us care, like the Baby Yoda and the Carl Weathers character and stuff like that. So I didn't think, as I said, I don't think it was completely bad, but I thought it maybe could have been a little better.
All right, fair enough. What about yourself, Rob? What didn't work quite so well with this? Where do you think they maybe misstepped?
Specifically, start with some of the humor was just really, really just. I mean, it didn't just fall flat. It was like it died as soon as it came out of their mouths. Amy Sedaris in episode 5, just like the nicest lady and most Isley they find. This the character that he was with in that, I don't even remember his name. I called him Zac Efron.
It was a Toro something, yeah.
I mean, the funniest part of that episode was when he spoke to the Tusken Raiders. That was pretty funny, but a lot of the humor throughout just kind of fell flat for me. But mostly in the middle. The fourth episode's whole saving the village story. I review a lot of things, and I watch a lot of stuff. And so just to see we've got a, Seven Samurai Save the Village story, just felt really stale. I literally a week later reviewed something that had the exact same plot. The acting in that episode was also, besides Gina Carano, was just awful. I don't understand the walker. Was that manned by someone, or was it an artificial intelligence? There were a lot of just kind of plot and logic problems that I had with 4, 5, and 6. 5, I was like, you wasted Ming-Na Wen in that. She was supposed to be this like badass assassin, and she gets I don't know if that was supposed to be subversion of expectations, but he just takes her out. And then, but there were so many problems with his plan and the logistics of time that went in there, that I can't even go into without taking a really long time. And then episode 6, I didn't really care about any of these characters. At first, Bill Burr being in the episode was almost enough to take me out of it, but I came around. But one of the things I guess about episode 6 that turned me around was I didn't care about these people, and because it kind of turned into a Star Wars horror movie at the end, where Pedro is taking everybody out one by one, and when you get to Bill Burr's the dark coming up and flashing, that shouldn't have worked, but it did. And I know we're supposed to be talking about cons, but
no, go ahead.
The whole thing with the barge in general, the design of it, some of it just felt like it was designed for the plot. Why would they have holes in the bars to get through? They're in space. You don't want these, all these creatures could all look differently. They don't all have just regular human arms. Some of them could have tentacles that could stretch across the entire ship if they could get out. Things like that. I also complained at first about the guy, the only human on board, that just was pretty much like if he goes down, the whole place could go down. If they get past the robots, this is who's in charge of the ship. And he didn't seem to have any problem immediately just handing the ship over to them. I was told later on that was one of these characters was the director of the episode or one of the creators of the show, and that was secret Easter egg. And now I feel like I'm rambling, but
no, I like it when the passion comes out here. This is when we're hitting the good stuff.
In the middle, a lot of just things logically just stopped making sense a lot of times, to the point where I had so many negative comments put on my channel because I was being told I didn't have any imagination and things like that. But when you review enough things, you don't like to nitpick, but when things stop making sense, you have to point it out. And there was a lot of just logical problems that were put in there for plot. And Baby Yoda's powers being only working for the plot or for a humor was a little annoying at times. But other than that, the good outweighs the bad. But I know some people take offense when you use the word filler. People that are creators, people that are creatives don't like you to use the word filler because they're creating it and they don't consider it filler when they're making it. But filler doesn't always mean a bad thing. But in this case, it kind of does.
Well, no.
And I don't mean any disrespect for the people who make things, but there were little tidbits in all those episodes I mentioned that do slightly move the plot along, but they were done in such a way that it's easy to ignore those important things when you're seeing things that you've seen done a million times and done better. And I don't know. That's about all I have, I think, for right now.
Well, I think you're right about filler. I mean, we all love a good popcorn movie now and then that doesn't mean anything, doesn't go anywhere. It's just going to be some eye candy for a while, and you don't have to walk away leaving anything. There's nothing wrong with filler, I think. But I think you're right. When it's something that you're like, you've got a story here, you got a story here, and you put a couple of episodes that don't contribute to any of that story, you're filling that space up. So, I think people can be overly offended by that. Before I give mine, Desiree Garcia in the chat wasn't particularly fond of the random romance in the Save the Village episode. Felt so sudden and out of nowhere. Very true. And she just reached out to grab his helmet and take that off. The whole episode 6 was kind of meh and until it turned into a horror movie. I think I liked that episode a little bit more than you guys, just because it had Clancy Brown. And so whenever you have the Kurgan in an episode, I'm going to go with it. And they did do some great lighting effects and such when they did sort of turn on the whole horror idea there. So there was some stuff that worked on that for me. But what, I think the two of the things that got me the most, one is, Mark, you mentioned on this, the music. A lot of people really like the music on this show. I am not one of them. I like about half of the music, about 50%, usually the opening bars of their stuff. even of the theme. I like the whole kind of whistly gunslinger type feel. But as everything goes on, it builds too much. It gets a little too cheesy. It gets a little too orchestral. It gets a little too big. And I don't think that always works for this show. Specific episode wise, everyone knows I did not like the gunslinger at all. That episode annoyed me. One, like Amy Sedaris, who I love as a comedian, I don't think she fit in here. I didn't like the idea of doing fan service for Tatooine when, from a logic standpoint, if you're wanted, especially by the underground, going to Mos Eisley seems to be the worst place you could possibly decide to go to. Yes, I like the bit with the sand people was a funny little joke. Oh, they're the locals. They're waiting for everyone else to leave, but it was a total waste of Ming-Na Wen. And I think, when they lean too much into fan service, I think this is when the show really trips up. I think when they do it just a little bit, tell a whole new story, but give us little reminders or hints of familiar things in the world, I think worked really well. Like I said, the whole Salacious Clum bit, the mouse droid, there were all of these small little moments which reminded me of the world I was in it. And just gave me a little kid joy in the back of it while I was watching the show, but allowed my adult to appreciate the story that was going on right in front of me. So yeah, I think when they did their little bits of fan service, worked much better than when they leaned too heavily into it. And yeah, there was a little cheese, but I have to realize the show is made for a general audience. It's Disney Plus. They want everyone to be able to watch it. And I get where that comes from, but it does make me worry that they're going to start homogenizing a lot of their action in order to make it all 4-quadrant friendly. And I think that would be a mistake. I think giving us variety, have some kid stuff, have some more adult stuff, have some stuff that works for both adults and kids. Mixing it up like that is a lot better because, otherwise you get the cheesy, unnecessary romance in the middle of an episode. You get a whole fan-friendly service episode. You get the repeated tropes, like you're talking about, Rob, of just stories that we've seen 15, 20 times before. So that there's nothing new or fresh inside of that. I think that's when they really kind of make their mistakes. Let's see. Michael Cannon in the chat. Not sure we're just convinced the last of Ming-Na. If we have, then yes, it was a waste. But that mysterious figure at the end of the episode leaves it possible for her to return. Did that ever pay off? Oh yeah,
no, I saw. Yes, I've read an interview with the showrunners who confirmed that the mysterious figure who appeared at the end of the episode was Gus Fring, or what's his name?
Moff Gideon.
Yeah, Moff Gideon. Yeah. They confirmed that was him. So I don't.
Yeah.
So I think maybe we have seen the last of her, unless he had somehow brought her back to life.
Yeah, but again, that would be a waste.
Yeah, I suspect as much.
Especially if you're going to have a throwaway character, don't give me someone interesting. Don't give me someone that's going to be something that can come back. Yeah.
She's a good actress, but I don't think they portrayed that character very well in that episode.
No.
Yeah.
No, I don't see what was badass about her at all. I mean, okay, she was a sniper, and that was it. I mean, she looked great. I love the mask and everything.
I mean, then her being a badass was totally tell not show. Like they were telling us repeatedly she was a badass, and we never actually saw it.
Right.
Okay. I tried telling people early, like I think in the last episode, that this guy that was following them was probably just Moff Gideon. Like everybody was holding out hope. The biggest rumor was it's gonna be Boba Fett because it's Tatooine, and that's where he was last seen when he went into the Sarlacc pit. And if you go off the books, he escaped and all that stuff. But honestly, it just makes more sense that there was somebody following him, somebody who knew everything about everybody that was with them, that is got the down low information. It's the guy at the end. It's Moff Gideon. They probably should have spelled that out a little bit more. They just like in the prequel trilogy when all Jimmy Smits had to say was wipe the protocol droid of his memory. Just throw a line out there that explains something. You just go, yeah, and by the way, I saw what you left for me on Tatooine, something like that, and it would have just cleared it all up instead of having the speculation over it. Also, yeah, you're right. The music was pretty sloppy. Sometimes it was great, and sometimes it was it's like the music was kind of indicative of the show a little bit because it's finding its identity. And I feel like the music was a part of that. Like, well, right now we're this, and right now we're this, and right now we're this. So that you need to have a balanced tone even in your music.
I think that's a fair. I think that's a fair exploration. Suddenly got very quiet. No, I think that's a fair exploration, and it always takes a little while for any show to sort of find its footing. First season of any show is always a little rough. I think we judge a little bit more because it's Star Wars. There's a certain expectation. We know it's 8 episodes, so it's not like you've got a lot of time to play with. We expect a certain thing. And actually, talking about expectations, we were talking about this just before we went on. There's a lot of expectations for this show and for Disney Plus, apparently, which has suffered an apparent hit. Before I go on to everything else, I do want to mention that there was a lot of big talk with how many first-day subscribers that Disney Plus had, a lot of it driven by The Mandalorian, especially the explosion of Baby Yoda. And yet, after the show ended, apparently they lost a few. Mark, do you want to kind of explore that a little bit there?
Oh, yeah, no, I just heard, I don't have any exact numbers in front of me, but I heard that they're projected to lose billions compared to what they were going to make if all those subscribers had stayed subscribed. So I heard right now that Disney's having a bit of a freak out. And so they're thinking about pushing up some of their other shows, maybe doing them a bit earlier, like some of their Marvel shows, or trying to really go forward with some of these other Star Wars shows because they suddenly realized without any new shows, people were just out. I think they expected the back catalog to carry them through, but I think that wasn't very realistic of them to expect that.
Yeah, and for those of you that haven't heard, Season 2 for Mandalorian has been announced and confirmed for next fall. So not a long wait. And also, I think it was dropped earlier today that WandaVision has been moved from 2021 to 2020. So there does seem to be some movement here that maybe they're looking for a little bit of material. Rob, you think think that's the smarter move on their point? Do you think they weren't prepared for what streaming actually is?
Yeah, I mean, how long has Netflix had streaming? And Netflix didn't have really original programming when they started, but even regular channels, right? Or channels like HBO. You get rid of one thing, you have to have something to replace it. You can't rely on Lady and the Tramp. You can't rely on the High School Musical. And look, you can't even count on The World According to Jeff Goldblum, okay? You just can't. I love Jeff, but your average person's not going to want to hear him talk about sneakers, no matter what. I do, but there's a lot of people that just are going to go, oh, yeah, I don't need this. So you need to always have, even AMC, right? Walking Dead's over, you get Fear the Walking Dead to take over right away. Then Walking Dead comes back. They always have something in the chamber to fire as soon as the next thing's over. So, and also they think they misthought that not a lot of people own that vault already. Grandmas and grandpas have the VHSs of Aladdin still. My dad has all the old Disney movies mixed with what I already own with the Star Wars and the Marvel and the last 20 years of Disney stuff. People already own all this stuff. And with DVDs and Blu-ray sales, how many people are really watching Avengers Endgame right now on the streaming service unless it's just easier to watch it on Disney Plus than walking into the other room and getting the Blu-ray that you own. So you have to have something always going. And maybe they really thought that they were going to get some of these people that really want to see gargoyles and X-Men and stuff, because I do. That's me. That is me. But I also, every time I turn on Disney Plus and it's not for The Mandalorian, I end up usually turning it off. There's something else.
Yeah.
Or watching a buddy on YouTube that talks about something that I want to talk about, something more current. So current is the thing. And yeah, so if they are smart, right, and it sounds like they've wisened up really fast, Winter Soldier and Falcon, WandaVision, and The Mandalorian. So you figure like 8 shows a piece. Let's say that's 24 weeks. They got 24 weeks, but you can't have a break. Next week, you have to have event television on a new streaming service to survive. Because smaller streaming services try and they can't, because it's kind of a rookie mistake that for a company like Disney, who aren't rookies in just about anything, you would not expect them to have made this mistake. But I guess I really wasn't paying attention to it until it was mentioned here that there is nothing else really to go there to, unless you don't have that, unless you're way overly nostalgic for shows like Boy Meets World, or The Sweet Life with Zach and Cody or something. I don't know. I don't watch any of that stuff. But I mean, or even watching Home Alone, which always plays on some other channel 24/7. Like in Avatar. Who doesn't own the Blu-ray of Avatar?
Yeah, for sure.
Although The Simpsons is a big draw, I would say that. But yeah, it's a rookie mistake.
Well, yeah, I think all of the big DuckTales fans probably already had the DVD series collection if they were really that far waiting for the new releases. So
I don't, but
yeah,
but I'm watching it right now.
Well, but that's the thing. I mean, it's got a vault that people will dump into. Yeah, but people are always looking for something new, and I think that did kind of catch them by surprise. Hopefully that means that gives a little bit of positive thought to maybe some of us Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. fans, that suddenly Disney Plus will realize they need more seasons of that. But I'll leave that there. We're talking Mandalorian.
I wouldn't count on that, though, because Kevin Feige is running the TV division.
Oh, yeah. Marvel
he just wants his stuff.
Marvel Television
is screw all the other stuff. I'm doing my thing now.
For sure. Okay, so let's get into a little bit of the lore that we got for this. Specifically, we're moving on to season 2, since we know that that's going to have. One of the big drops was Giancarlo Esposito as Moff Gideon, popping up right at the end. First job, killing the client, which I think is always a nice way to sort of step things up. Really, how do you introduce the badder guy? You have him kill the previous bad guy. But what is it that we hope to see looking forward for season 2 for Moff Gideon, keeping in mind, of course, the big reveal for those of us that have been watching some of the other extended universe, Star Wars Rebels and such, his use of the Darksaber in that final episode to get out of his tie. For those of you not familiar, the Darksaber is a Mandalorian weapon of legend, was actually created by the first Mandalorian Jedi, whose name, I'm sorry, I do not recall off the top of my head, but becomes basically kind of like the Excalibur. If you wield the Darksaber, you can lead the Mandalorian people. And at the end of Mandalorian, that's what Gideon uses to cut his way out of his TIE fighter, indicating that we're definitely going to be diving into some more Mandalorian lore and such going into the next season. So what are your thoughts on Moff Gideon? Is he a good bad guy? What do you look forward to seeing him, and what do you think we're going to explore in season 2? Let's start with you there, Rob, while you're fiddling with your TV there.
Well, I think he's going to be a great bad guy, and I really hope that we get to see how he got it. I would love for them to devote. First, let's get some more episodes. Let's get some more episodes in there. Let's make it like 8, go from 8 to at least 10. And I want a more diverse group of episodes, but still stick with the major through line and not take too many dives into, episodic stuff. Also, I want to see, like I said, bring the story about how he got that dark saber. I want to see what his connection is, because he's a brand new spanking bad guy. All right, he's someone that is clearly the Empire might have fallen, but he didn't get the message. And he's on his own quest. What is that quest, really? Honestly, he's got a bunch of stormtroopers. He's got the dark saber, but we don't know anything about him, and that's what's great. Is I want to see his mystery start to unfold just as much as we see. I think we'll see the Mandalorian start to train more, because remember that jetpack. He has to become basically one with that jetpack, right? When we saw him use it, it was just out of necessity. Just shoot up into the air and pray that he can get the thing done, and barely being able to come down. So I think he's going to have to get with some more Mandalorians. We're going to probably see some more of the fall of Mandalore, possibly, with how he got the darksaber. There's also, can we speculate? Are we allowed to speculate? Because I mean,
of course,
if we're not making any more Star Wars Rebels, this would be a great way to bring in some of those characters, like Ezra Bridger. We don't know what happened to him. We know that there was a mission. We know there's stuff going on there. Unless they plan on making maybe their own side Star Wars Rebels stuff for Disney Plus, which is not out of the realm of impossibility. But there's those kind of possibilities. I'd rather see stuff like that than go on to full on finding more Jedi just magically somewhere in the universe. I also think it would be kind of cool to actually find out what Yoda is. It would be really nice to somehow track it down. And I hope they resolve the Baby Yoda story before the end of the series. I kind of hoped it would be at the end of this, but the way that they do it here is fine. Just as long as it's not something that we follow for 6 years. Okay, trying to find this place, it's like trying to get off the island on Lost, right? You just know, and then have to go back, you know what I mean? So let's put this baby in somebody's arm permanently by the end of it. And also maybe just develop the stuff that really worked in this. If you're going to have Carl Weathers and Gina Carano be regulars on the show, give them arcs, just like you would any other show. Maybe give them some backstory that flows with the story that they're being told. Like a lot of times on shows like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., you'll have a character going through something similar to what is happening in the story that connects them to what's happening in the current, episode. I would like to see stuff like that brings conflict into each episode for individual characters. That's just my first thoughts, really.
I think those are good thoughts. What about you, Mark? What do you think about our Moff Gideon, and what are about your expectations for season 2?
Well, I'm personally really looking forward to the story with Moff Gideon, where he kidnaps the Mandalorian and forces him to cook blue meth for him. And then eventually the Mandalorian gets the better of him by having this guy in a wheelchair, explode. I'm serious, it's not just as the same actor. He's playing him exactly like Gus Fring. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. But it is really interesting. But no, seriously, I kind of agree. I want them to go more in a serialized. The Gus Fring place, but I want them to go more in a serialized sort of manner, more with the characters most of all, rather than doing this thing where they introduce new characters every single episode that here they are and we don't care about them and they die at the end of the episode. I'd rather have a village they need to say that we never see ever again. I'd rather they focus more on the characters that we have, like the shock trooper and Carl Weathers. I can't even remember his character.
Grief Karga, yeah.
Yeah. And maybe introduce some more characters that are going to stay, that are going to be more consistent. One thing I thought worked really well in season 1 was, and I forgot to mention this, was the droid. I can't remember its name, voiced by Taika Waititi.
IG-11, yeah.
Yeah, IG-11. That was a very good, it was a good character arc for the Mandalorian that he's had, because he hated droids, but he had to be saved by one by the end. And of course, Taika Waititi voiced him, which I thought was amazing. But then he died at the end, so we don't have him anymore. So we do need sort of some of those lasting long-term story arcs. And not, even in the best serialized show, not every single episode has to contribute to the greater story. But if it doesn't, then it needs to contribute more to the character buildings, which I thought a lot of these middling episodes, 4, 5, and 6, didn't really do much to develop the characters. So I think I would like to see more of that going forward. And I don't know if I would mind if we got to the end of season 2 and we didn't know exactly the deal with Baby Yoda, but they do need to make some headway in that. They can't just be like, oh, we're going off in different adventures searching for his homeworld and we can't find it and nothing changes. They need to advance that story and definitely get more into why Moff Gideon wants Baby Yoda so badly. And stuff like that, because this is things I actually feel like they should have done in season 1, but I guess they're sort of pacing themselves for a more longer drawn out story, which is fine, but we need to start getting into this stuff more in season 2, and plus longer episodes. That's part of why I feel maybe it feels a bit cartoonish, because each episode is only a half hour long.
Right. Yeah, there is, and I can understand doing that from a budget standpoint. Michael Cannon in the chat had mentioned earlier on, which I wanted to get back to, their use of digital sets, which is something that I was really curious about. They do have almost VR sets where they film and shoot everything, and then they digitally play over on top of that. So they're doing some new ideas. I mean, Lucas is always talking about, what new technology is this Star Wars developing? Yes, I'm doing George Lucas as a crazy old man. What kind of crazy stuff are you doing? What technology you're developing? And they actually are with this show. They really are doing some virtual sets and such, which is saving them a lot of money and allowing them to really do a lot of bigger Star Wars looks, which I think is really, a smart thing to do.
But one other thing I want to say is that I thought that I heard somewhere, and I've never watched Rebels, so I don't know if this is the case, so you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I heard somewhere that Moff Gideon was a character from Rebels that was mentioned in Rebels.
Possibly, I don't remember offhand, but it's been a while since I've watched. It didn't spark a memory to me, but they do a lot of characters and stuff, so I wouldn't doubt it may have at least been mentioned at some point. Yeah, Rob, you've got a good quizzical look on your face there.
Now, I know that there's a guy that's voiced by the guy who played Game of Thrones, Ramsay Bolton. He's a character, the blue. I think he's a Moff, Grand Moff Tarkin. I think.
You're talking about Grand Admiral Thrawn. Thrawn, that's what I was thinking of.
Yeah. Not a Tarkin. He's the only one that I know of, but he's not a Moff. So I don't remember it. It's been a little while for me too. Yeah. I keep meaning to go back to it, but I don't have a lot of time.
No, and Thrawn's a Chiss, so he's an entirely different race. He's actually Thrawn is from the big Heir to the Empire trilogy that sort of kicked off all of the Star Wars stuff. Books and everything like that. Amazing sequence of books. An amazing character. Was one I was really glad they were actually going to use in Rebels. I didn't feel like he was used to his best impact, just because he is such an awesome giant character. But they do kind of relay that maybe he might come back with the whole end of Rebels future shot they did, which... Yeah, let's just go in and tie into that on my thoughts here. Obviously, with Moff Gideon having the Darksaber, they're going to be diving into a lot more of Mandalorian lore, their backstory, where he was from, why he knows everything. We've got to see probably a bit more of the Purge, which would be great. And I know it's whenever you bring characters over from animation to live action, not that happens a whole lot, but a lot of people are often attached to voice actors and things like that. So when you have to recast them, sometimes you get, people that like it, some people that don't. Also, you've got to transfer a whole look, which from animation to real life has some issues. Marvel's been pretty good at it. Star Wars is doing a good job here, I think. But I would love to see Sabine Wren pop up at some point. I would love her in her full just spray painted, totally different Mandalorian look. While we do have our Mandalorian, certainly where he comes from, they're all about keeping the helmet on. From Rebels and such, previous in Mandalorian, that was not necessarily part of the culture. You see people with their helmets off all of the time. I would love to see different sects of Mandalore come in, because they say it's not a people, it's not a race, it's a creed, which is why you can have foundlings be part of your Mandalorian. Is that something that really developed, around the Purge, post-Purge? Was that something that was always part of Mandalorian cultures? It's something they've used to expand their sort of footprint. I'd be really curious to dive into that. And as for Baby Yoda, yeah, I think we're getting at least 2 more seasons of looking for Baby Yoda's home. Maybe they do it next season and end up at the end, but I think it's going to end up being a battle of not being tailed, because, and this is something else that I wanted to get into, we haven't talked about or on the show why they want Baby Yoda, why they want the child. The doctor, I think, had a clone image. Was it the planet? Sorry, I'm not thinking of
Camino.
Camino. I think he had like a Camino patch or insignia or something on him. I had read up in Reddit. Some people had picked that out. There was some idea of, do they want him for cloning? I was wondering if they're trying to make Sith. Are they going to reintroduce midichlorians here? Is that what they're trying to extract from the child to transfer force powers? Obviously, I'm speculating, wildly here. And I know there's probably tons of people that don't ever want to hear the term midichlorian again, but it's owned by Disney and we don't really get to make those choices. So I think, obviously, if they're after the child, if they find the homeworld, they could get more of the child. So while the Mandalorian has to look for this place, he has to be sure that nobody follows him either. So I think that's going to stretch out the adventure. So I think between looking for Baby Yoda's home and the whole Mandalorian kind of backstory and getting some character backstories, which you're right, I think would be a really smart choice to fill in any of those corners and spaces where they need to do. Daniel York in the chat, do not say the M word. Yeah, I understand. What do you guys think they want from Baby Yoda? Why is the child so important? What do you think is the goal? Because it's something they definitely have to explore more. But what do you think? Have you guys got any impressions? Do you have any insights? Was there Easter eggs you picked up that maybe some of us missed? Rob, let's start with you.
Well, I mean, I honestly, I don't really know, but I would say this possibly is that this is in the same world as Rise of Skywalker, and maybe Moff Gideon is under orders from the guy from Exegol, if it's okay to say, who's over there.
Sure. Well, we should probably be a little light on spoilers. I mean, it's been long enough, but I don't know how everybody's seeing it.
Maybe he's been directed to find him.
He's in the poster for the movie, so I don't know how big of a spoiler that is.
That's true.
And who knows what? Like, I honestly, I think that the answer is going to be weaker than we want it to be in the end. I think it's not going to be this massive shock when we find out what it is. I think that's what I would just bring to the table here is temper your expectations on it, because there's really only so many reasons they could possibly want it for. I don't think it's his long lost son or anything like that.
No,
my boy, you've got part of me, no, that's not going to happen. But I think that it's probably got to do with something with his DNA, something at a biological level that they want from the kid. Mm-hmm. Maybe to understand the Force more, or how do you get the Force, even if it, and that probably does fall into the realm of the M word, but yeah, I think that it's somewhere around that territory.
All right. What about you, Mark? What do you think they're after Baby Yoda for?
I just thought of a specific theory, but this involves getting into spoilers for episode 9. I don't know if you're okay with
All
that.
All right. Spoilers for episode 9 here, folks. Here's our spoiler warning. and I will wave my hands again when we are out of spoiler territory, because I really want to hear this.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mark.
All right, so you mentioned the insignia of the community cloner, so that he's a cloning type. So the theory is, and you might have touched this earlier, Rob, with the guy from Exco, of course, we're talking about, Emperor Palpatine, that he, at the beginning of episode 9, he had a bunch of Snoke clones. So it's implied that he cloned Snoke. And so it's possible that they needed Baby Yoda's Force abilities in order to pull that off.
So
somehow related to that they need his metachlorians or his powers in order to make an effective Snoke clone. And maybe they don't get it from Baby Yoda, but because it doesn't happen, like Force Awakens is 30 years later. But maybe that's what they're trying to do.
So you're theorizing, both of you are sort of theorizing, ideating that they might be attempting to use Mandalorian to fix the holes in Rise of Skywalker. I'm not making a criticism of the movie. I'm just talking about they put a lot of stuff out there. This is how they try to fill holes.
I don't think it would fix the holes.
Okay. Fair enough.
I didn't see it, so I don't even know. I know. I basically feel like I've already seen the movie, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know if anything will fix it from what I've been hearing. But it could be, because even when they first used Force healing, when Baby Yoda used Force healing, I was like, it's going to happen. 2 days from now, people are going to go, that's the precedent. Baby Yoda did it, so, it's fixed. It's a thing that's fixed because we saw it before 2 days ago for the first time.
Yeah, okay. I don't think that air date was a coincidence, the fact that came out right before episode 9.
Sure. All right. I'm gonna end the spoilers here, so we actually spoil it for one of our people on the panel. That's so awesome of us. But actually, that does bring up an interesting point that I would love to kind of jump on. I don't think we need to go too much longer, but I am kind of curious. I mean, we're kind of joking about using some of the plot points to sort of fix the movies, but would that be a smart move to try and tie in these live action with these with the larger movies ideas, or do you think the series really would serve a purpose better to focus on its own stories as opposed to trying to be a point to tie in ideas with larger films and sort of branching off? There has been talk that maybe some people from these films could branch off into other things, or you might see people from the sequel trilogy show up on Mandalorian. I don't know how you do that because there's like a 30-year difference between the two shows. But yeah, I mean, I think that could be a concern is they're going to use this as a branch point off to sort of serve other ideas. Do you think that would undercut the show, or do you think that might be a smart move to use this as a playground that they can develop other stuff film wise? Mark, what do you think?
Yeah, I would actually not think that'd be a terrible idea. I'd like to see it tie into greater mythology as long as they use it sparingly. Like they don't hyper focus on that, and they don't be like jump 20 years or 10 years and be like, oh, here's a young Poe when he was a spice runner or whatever the hell he was doing. Like we don't need to. They don't need to go that heavily into it. But if they sort of, what I was thinking, I was going to mention earlier that I think would be nice if we did get some of the origins of the First Order, and that perhaps maybe Moff Gideon is somehow tied to that. Like, I wouldn't mind that, but they would need to be careful about it and just do it sparingly and not jump too into it, not make it too reliant on that sequel trilogy, because that is not very popular. You do want the Mandalorian to stand on its own, as long as it does that. But if it has some tie-ins where, oh, this makes sense, this fits into the movies, this fits into Rebels, like, I think that only enriches the universe.
Okay, very cool. Rob, what do you think?
I think, yeah, basically he nailed it. I mean, to touch on what you said, I mean, for what worked with the show anyway, and like as far as fan service goes, is use it sparingly, but when it's going to be not just cool, but when it's necessary, when it just adds something to the story, it doesn't take away from it, it doesn't distract you from it. It just makes you go, huh, cool. Like, you know what I mean? Like, or maybe this is a little something that you could think about later, that maybe affects something later, but doesn't have to be a definitive yes or no, this is going to tie in for sure. If you want to have somebody mention something that maybe ties into Force Awakens later, you'll go, oh, that's something that we might be able to change the way you watch one of those movies later on, where you go, oh yeah, remember when Mandalorian did this and such and such. But I think I might also be giving some of these people way too much credit. But like the plan, like there's a bigger plan, because see, the thing about the Mandalorian is they had a plan, and as long as they stick to this kind of plan and they just evolve it a little bit by a little bit and put those little extra tidbits, because that's even the humor in the show works when it's just that little extra tidbit. I think that's where they need to go with that. And also definitely mention what that guy wrote in there about old Yoda showing up, because that's something I think I would like to talk about, or at least should be mentioned. I saw that in the comment section.
Oh, yeah. Daniel Yerkes mentioning, do you think old Yoda will show up in Obi-Wan? I hope not. Yeah, and I think that I think you guys are, again, hitting the point right on the head. I think world building works when it's done subtly, slowly, and sparingly. I don't want this to turn into the Force Awakens prequel, the series, where we're devoting ourselves to telling us all about the origins of the First Order. If the origins of the First Order naturally play into the development of this storyline, that is why they're after the child. It is some base there. It's a Snoke connection or whatever. I would have no problem with that. Yeah, we're the same thing with Obi-Wan. Yeah, I loved Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan Kenobi. I'm excited that he's going to come back. I'm excited they're going to expand out that character. I am cautious that it's going to be, these are the quiet adventures of Obi-Wan that nobody knew about when nobody were paying attention. Or he was looking over a young Luke there in the sand dunes, or he kept having to leave the planet and fight fight the Empire with, like, I don't know, a mask on, so they don't go, hey, it's Obi-Wan, a Jedi. I'd love them to expand these stories. I'm always cautious that they're going to be trying to do too much with them. So, yeah, Obi-Wan, great. Old Yoda and Obi-Wan, do we really need that? I don't think so. I think that undercuts the previous stories that we've told and characters that we have set up. So, yeah, small bits.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be very cautious about this Obi-Wan show. I don't know if this is because The Mandalorian, as I said, was the best idea because there's a new character, new situation. Obi-Wan is kind of like what they tried with Solo, which really didn't work. And so, I don't know. I like Ewan McGregor as a character, so I'd be willing to give it a chance. But, like, what does he even do in between, like, before A New Hope, which I believe is set? Like, do we really need to see the lead up to that? Like, they're going to have to work a lot harder than The Mandalorian did in order to justify why we need this show to exist.
For sure. I completely agree with that. That's a definitely tougher call, and I think that's why Mandalorian being on its own, I think, works so much more. That's the stories I think Star Wars needs to tell more, is you have an entire universe and you have thousands of years of history to do it. It's like J.R.R. Martin on crack. Okay, you got thousands of years, you got all this lore, you've got a lot of writers have worked on expanded universe, and yeah, when Disney bought it, they tossed a lot of that to the side. But much like Thrawn, maybe you can pick and choose the stuff that worked and you liked out of that and make it something bigger, kind of like what the MCU did from their comic stuff. They took comic stories and picked and chose out of that, and that people would recognize and make them bigger and more exciting adventures. I think Star Wars, whether they do film or series, would benefit greatly from going into completely unexplored territory where they don't get caught back up in countering lore or people's expectations or attachments to certain characters and what they want to see. Give me a Knights of the Old Republic 1,000 years ago, you could do whatever you want because I know nothing about that world. You know, I think that would be we're, again, a little bit off on a tangent right there, but I think that would be a great thing. I think that would be a smart way to go. So fan service, yes, in small bits, but there's a whole universe, there's a whole galaxy and time frame of stuff to explore. We don't need to just be Jedi and smugglers, you know.
See, and I do want to say that I'm not one of those people that want the Star Wars franchise to end. I was like, oh, Disney's just killing it. They should just stop doing it and just leave the original trilogies as is and do no more Star Wars. I like the universe. I want to delve into it more. I wanted to see this explored more, but I want them to be smarter about it. And I think The Mandalorian was a good first step in that direction.
Right on, yeah, exactly. I think you are you're right on. I think it is. It's a whole universe that they can explore. That they've got stuff with. I think they should do more of it. Okay, so let's rank it, shall we? On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the worst, 10 being the best. Rob, where would you rate The Mandalorian season 1? You can use whole numbers, you can use fractions. I don't like to put any rules further than 1 to 10.
I'd say 8. 7.5 to 8. Just because of the episodes 4 and 5, not 3 and 4, 4 and 5. Mm-hmm. And like, you know, the music didn't bother me that much and stuff, but like as far as like knowing that I'm gonna watch this a lot in the next before it comes out for season 2, I have to give it an 8 because of rewatchability. I'm gonna be just dissecting this thing like a lot, and I've been searching. I mean, I bought the shirt almost as quick as you bought the shirt. I've been looking for Mando Funko Pops. I only found an IG-11, you know, and I'm like, well, he's going to get – I mean, I even knew he's not going to make it through season 1, so I don't want IG-11. I want Mando. I want Baby Yoda, you know. So I know that I'm already in, so I have to go 8. I have to go high because I'm committed to this, unlike other like things that are Star Wars right now. And it's just so good to be able to talk Star Wars. So 8, yeah, I got to give it an 8.
Excellent. All right, Mark, what about you? How are you rating The Mandalorian?
I think I'm actually going to go 7 with this one. I still think the positive definitely outweigh the negatives. I do think this is Star Wars taking it in the right direction. I was just too thrown off. I think they kind of lost track in the middle of the series and kind of making it a bit. Some of the character choices, as I mentioned, like even the finale, seemed like a bit cartoonish. So I think there's a lot of things that could tighten up. But they're definitely on the right track, and they're definitely doing a lot of things right. So it's a good show. Like it's a 7 out of 10. You know, still good rating, good show. A lot of things done right. I think there's room for improvement. So I hope the show only goes up from here.
Yeah, I'm probably about where you guys are, 7.5 to 8. There was, you know, some missteps in there, but I think the positives far outweigh the negatives. I think they took some chances. I love the fact that with our main character, our Mandalorian, we didn't see his face for the entire season. I mean, yes, we caught that one moment, which whether it was necessary or not, I honestly don't think it was all that necessary in the moment. But the fact that we could follow a character with just body language and voice intonation was awesome. The fact that it wasn't even Pedro Pascal a lot of the time, but a stunt double that was playing the Mandalorian Muscle, to me, so much more interesting as an ex-stunt performer myself. I love when these guys get credit. David Prowse, another one who did amazing physical work, being Darth Vader, that then had another voice put on top of it, you know, of him, of course, you know, the best James Earl Jones voice ever. But I love the fact that we were able to commit to a character that we didn't really see their face, and we could still tell so much story behind it. Yeah, the music could have some issues. There's some filler stuff and over fan service, I think, that were missteps. But I'm in it. I'm dropping my money down on Disney Plus. I'd pay for next season already. I'm in line for it. So no, I'm completely committed to this series, and I really hope that it lives up to at least even some of our expectations. Would put me over the top. So yeah, well, I think that pretty much covers everything. Is there anything anybody else wanted to sort of top off? Final thoughts, opinions there, Rob?
Yeah, what you brought up, and I kept trying to think about how we'd work this in, was the helmet coming off. I've thought about this a lot, and I've heard everybody's opinions on it and everything. And I'm torn between two thoughts on that. Is that one? I think Disney wanted the audience to have a face looks like they couldn't help but keep taking Spider-Man's mask off. I think they just needed to acknowledge that there is somebody in that suit, but it doesn't matter. But it doesn't matter what he looks like. He's just a guy, right? You have this picture of who it's supposed to be under that helmet, and it's just some guy. Pedro Pascal is a famous actor, but really, he's not like Tom Cruise famous, right? He just looks like a guy. And he's not bigger than life. He's a hurt human being, and it was also a character choice for who he was taking his mask off for. Not just because he was a robot, it's because he didn't trust robots. He didn't trust droids. And taking it off for even a droid would be to him nuts unless this droid had earned his trust. And taking that off was a character choice that I thought developed the character a little bit further, and especially made that scene later when he knows IG-11 is going to explode, make it feel more meaningful. That suddenly he gave this thing his trust to show him his face, and now he's got to say goodbye to it already. Gave that scene more impact. And I think too many people, I think we're taking it a little too hard. That because even I was always pushing hashtag keep the helmet on, but even I have to give them this little bit as far as character moment.
Well, yeah, and I think also the fact that it wasn't a pretty shot of Pedro Pascal. His face was messed up. He was aside. He was all sweaty. He at least looked like he'd been wearing a helmet this whole time. It didn't have like perfect hair when it was pulled off. So yeah, I think the choice of having him look like you said, just a guy. Mark?
Well, the one thing my brother brought up in his review, which I hadn't thought of, is how come he had like his perfect tiny little mustache under, and he was like theorizing, does the helmet like shave it for him and like groom like a little mustache? Like if he hardly ever takes his helmet off, like when does he shave? How did he groom this tiny little? But whatever. It's like I actually liked. I think it would be. I liked that it was just a one moment. I don't think that takes away from anything because for the vast majority of the show they kept the helmet on, and that's something most shows would be too chicken shit to do. Like even a lot of people made a big deal out of Dread with Carl Urban, but even then, at least you could see his mouth. Here, you see nothing, and so it was braver, and that they did it for like 8 episodes. So I don't begrudge them, and I actually think it helped that to actually see the face for once, just for one brief moment. So I thought it was fine. I thought it was good. I liked it.
Okay, very cool. Let's see, Desiree in the chat. How much you want to bet Mando's jetpack will mess up and Baby Yoda is gonna make him fly? And it's interesting. You had mentioned the jetpack before, and to me that was one of those where I thought the armor, who someone else had put in, we want to see more of the armor, and I totally agree. That armor kicked ass, and I definitely want to see more of her. But she had given this whole speech about the jetpack. You got to do your lessons. It's not going to respond to you until you make it. Once she made it sound all hard, and yet he walked out there was like, I need the jetpack, da-da-da, and then was able to fly. Even when he took Baby Yoda away and just sort of took off, kind of like reenacting the scene from him as a child with his Mandalorian savior taking off and flying. I thought they undercut the intensity of jetpack training with the fact that he seemed to just be able to do it just fine when he needed it.
See, what I think is going to happen is that jetpack that's going to get destroyed, and so he's going to get another jetpack from Littlefinger. He's going to get his jetpack so he can get from one side of Westeros to the other side in a single episode.
That's how these things are done. Space. It's going to be a light speed capable jetpack. Light speed skipping with the jetpack. There you go. All right. All right. So, any other things? We pretty much got that. I think we covered everything right there. All right. So, I think we'll go ahead and wrap everything up. Everyone in the chat, thank you so much for joining us live in the chat, submitting your questions, enjoying our little offshoot discussions here into further Star Wars and Marvel territory. But Rob, tell us where everybody can find you and what you're up to these days.
You can find me at Smirking Gun Reviews on YouTube. On Twitter, I am @reviews_gun. Right now, we're taking a little bit of a break and doing just game streams and comic book reviews. So a lot of comic book reviews this week. I got to wait till they actually arrive at my house, but we're going to be doing Star Wars #1 by Charles Soule, which is supposed to be incredible, taking place after Empire Strikes Back. It's supposed to be actually really good. We are going to be continuing our Resident Evil 2 live stream, which was a lot of fun. I'm terrified of that game. But regularly scheduled programming, we do Batman the Animated Series. We are now doing Justice League the Animated Series. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 2 is wrapping up reviews for that. We're about to start Season 3 soon. We do Doom Patrol, which is wrapping up. 1986's Michael Mann-driven Dennis Farina show Crime Story on Thursdays. Fridays, we've got The Leftovers. Saturday, we do Doctor Who Season 9. And pretty soon on HBO on Sundays, we're going to be doing The Outsider and Avenue B. Both shows coming out for that. And then we just finished His Dark Materials. Those are all up on the channel as well. So that's a lot. I'm doing a lot.
Nice. Good to stay busy. What about you, Mark? Tell everybody what you're doing and where they can find you.
All right, so my channel's Enchantment of Eternity at the moment is being taken over by The Expanse. I'm going to be covering the hell out of The Expanse. I'm going to be doing 2 videos a week for The Expanse. One for my episode review. I'm going through all the episodes, even though you can find my full review on the season, because the whole season dropped at once. You can find it on my channel, but I'm still going episode by episode, doing a review and doing a book-to-show comparison, because I'm a bit of a book nerd. Also, of course, this guy right here, Darren, will be joining me this Saturday night, along with special guest, my brother Abkin Tomko and Don Willie. I just announced he's going to be joining us as well, so we're going to be talking about Season 4 of The Expanse for our live discussion this Saturday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 6 p.m. West Coast time. And other than that, I'll be covering Star Trek Picard when it comes out. I'm going to be doing season reviews where I cover every episode of Star Trek The Next Generation. I think that starts in February. And then Better Call Saul in March. So until for the next couple of months, it would just all be about The Expanse. But anyway, that's what I'll be up to.
Excellent. Okay, and of course, I'm D. You're on my channels, D's Reviews. We're actually sort of wrapping up our fall shows here, taking a little break until The Walking Dead returns in February for the second half of the season there. Later on, we can expect to have reviews of Westworld Season 3, and then, of course, the final season, Season 7 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. this summer. Don't have a whole lot of other things currently planned. We'll be talking The Expanse with Marc this Saturday. I think Rob and I were talking about doing another Expanse discussion later on. So love that show. Really highly recommend that for anybody that hasn't checked it out. And so we'll have a few other things popping up as soon as I see how the spring's going to settle show-wise. I'll have more announcements to shows to be covered. But other than that, please subscribe, like, share this with your friends. Hit the notification bell if you do subscribe. Let you know whenever any new reviews drop. But we're going to go ahead and say thank you so much, everyone in the chat, for joining us live. Everyone who is watching this in the archives, thank you for diving back into Season 1 of The Mandalorian with us. And we're going to say goodbye. So I'm D, and I'm out of here. We'll catch you guys next time. Bye-bye.